What's the use of being strong if absolute power crushes anything in front of it? The strongest is the one who dominates, so I will be the strongest. Welcome to another recap. Today we'll follow the one who lost once but will have his revenge. Without further ado, let's get to the video. Does he remember that day? If he did, he would be grateful that he survived all that pain. A man with blonde hair gets in the way of the squad, and in the same second, an unknown force rips every person in the group into small pieces. People in motorcycle helmets walk among the corpses and debris of the building. They are clearly looking for someone or something. Approaching the blonde man and calling him Mr. Bubby, one of the men informs him that they have been unable to find the money. Before he can finish his sentence, the poor man's head bursts open like a watermelon. The blonde man advises the others to do their best, or else they will be dead. Amidst the ruins of the building, a man sits on his last breath with his arm torn off and impaled by a metal rebar. He activates a special top-class skill. The system alerts the person that they will be sent back in time. As the man squirms in unbearable pain, the system warns that all his abilities will be canceled. The man is then asked to choose the date of the move. He chooses February 28, 1985, the date of his birth. He moves into the embryo's body just as it is being delivered. His mother is having a hard time. Something went wrong. The pain is unbearable for the child. It feels like his head is about to explode. But then he decides to fight, otherwise the mother will be in danger. The delivery is successful and without any consequences for the baby. The system reports to the newborn that the achievement, overcoming difficulties, has been obtained, as has the skill, person who overcomes difficulties, the skill that made the first evil the strongest. It is an intimidating skill that can change the course of events even if the wielder is unconscious. The system then announces the start of the quest. Getting Healthy, Part 1. The quest ends as soon as the baby is fed. Vitals and intelligence increase by 1 level, and a new quest begins. For these simple tasks, the child is given very generous rewards, which amaze him greatly. So the person who overcomes difficulties was not the only reason why the first evil was so strong. 8 evils and 8 virtues. These were the 16 class awakened ones who were dubbed the strongest. Those 8 who were faithful to the system were dubbed virtuous. The 8 who went against the system were labeled evil. Despite their different names, they were not very different from each other. After all, they only pursued their own personal interests. The guy recalls that he and other people fought them because they appropriated many objects and dungeons with their superior strength. However, to most people, the 16 chosen ones were no more than mosquitoes. Annoying an elephant, the strongest of them was the first evil. While the other awakened ones were doubting their strength, he was already at the peak of his powers. It would never have occurred to him that there would ever be another awakened one like him thanks to him revealing his embryo memories to everyone. The protagonist had traveled to this very time. After a few feeble attempts, the toddler was still able to utter a couple of important words. Status window. A status window opened in front of the guy, making it clear that his name was Sun Ho. He was given a reward for being able to summon the status window at such an early age. Sun Ho became the first awakened person in history. For that, he received a Challenger box, the most he could ever hope for. The Challenger box is a top-ranked box that gives the young man a chance to travel back in time. The guy decides to open it. He gets the skill. Odin's Wrath from the box. Odin's Wrath is the special skill of the 6th benefactor. Sun Ho still can't forget that day. The 6th benefactor used this skill to wipe out half of his fellow soldiers without blinking an eye. Sun Ho had just obtained a powerful divine rank skill. Finally, he could fight them. But before the day began, he must prepare everything he needs. The only reason he went back in time was to protect every last one of them, no matter what it cost him. From Sun Ho's recollection, he is walking down a busy city street and talking on the phone. The caller praises the guy for being savvy in their business. As soon as the colleague is about to invite the young man to tea, the connection is abruptly cut off. While Sun Ho tries to figure out the reason for this sudden dumping of the tube, people on the street start running away from something, and something lands nearby. Blood splatters the young man's face. The fallen, bloody body of a woman lies a few centimeters away from him. The guy's eyes fill with fear as he tries to realize what is happening. A monster appeared behind him, chopping people left and right, and the loudspeaker informed citizens that this was not a drill. Unidentified creatures were attacking people, and those on the street were asked to take shelter immediately. A window appeared in front of the fleeing Sun-Hu. The system told him to enter the test site immediately. After the system was alerted, the bodies of the young man and several others on the street began to disintegrate into small particles. It was the day of beginnings. Monsters infiltrated the human world through those dimensional holes, and the selected awakened ones were sent to a testing facility. Some spent months there, some decades. The returning awakened ones didn't even have a chance to catch their breath before that bloody battle. The hopeless situation forced mankind to use its strongest weapon, the nuclear bomb. However, they still failed, and civilization came to an end. The 8 evils and 8 benefactors used their powers solely for their own benefit. Sun-Hu sat in the body of a newborn baby and watched television as the box broadcast the 23rd Olympic Games in Los Angeles. The USSR and the Eastern European bloc were not participating, and he immediately remembered the Cold War between the USSR and the US, a useless conflict that everyone would forget about in a couple of years. They're both alive now, but it won't be long before the irreversible happens. There's no time to lose. When the whole family was asleep, Sun-Hu got up from the futon and tried to walk a little. Even though it didn't work the first time, he still managed to take 10 steps in a row. These actions marked the end of the Become Healthy quest chain. His vitals increased again, 20 points were gained, and the reward for completing the chain of challenges was a bronze box. This is insane. A bronze box that Sun-Hu could only get after suffering for a long time in the dungeons. The rewards of growing up are insane. It makes everything so much easier. First evil. If things continue at this rate, Sun-Hu will definitely kill this guy before the day of beginnings. If he's just allowed to continue to develop, he'll be another disaster for mankind. After a while the kid was sitting outside breathing fresh air, the system alerted him to the start of a new quest, Human Life Part 5. The conditions were not that difficult. One had to pick a target and talk to him using 10 or more sentences. However, who could he talk to if a baby born only a few months ago suddenly spoke coherent speech? It would be something out of the realm of fiction. The kid looked at the calendar and noticed that Chuseok, the Korean Thanksgiving, was coming up. At this party, a child meets a girl named Jia. Jia is 4 years old and should already be talking well at this age. And back in Sun-Hu's past, when she passed the bar exam, she was at the peak of her beauty, the pride of the family on her mother's side, until she went missing on the day of beginnings. The girl ran up to the baby, hugged him, and said, "Hello." A quiet "hi" came in response, and the boy asked the girl to be quiet and explained that he could only talk to her after that. The baby then asked her to keep everything a secret. They chatted some more, after which the system notified Sun-Hu that the Human Life quest chain had been completed and that all currently available tutorial quests were finished. Was this just a tutorial? The system reported that there were no more mandatory quests and that he had the option to skip the remaining ones. The child was then asked whether he wanted to skip infancy and toddler training. Yes, he would like to spend more time with his parents, but he might accidentally surprise or even scare someone. So Sun-Hu decided to skip his studies. I will find something to do in the future. I must prepare for the day of beginnings. 12 years passed. 1997. A bald man swung a wooden bat and prepared to strike, but the guy who was the target dodged, ran around the attacker from the side, and delivered a powerful punch to his opponent's liver. Then before the big guy could recover, the hooded man got into stance and delivered a lightning-fast punch straight into his opponent's face, sending him unconscious, and the crowd cheered. One man in the crowd said in surprise, "Damn, that son of a one won again. Now he's even taken over Mappo's neighborhood, and that's considering the fact that the fat one had a gun." The man then walked up to the young man and, congratulating him, said he was now the real boss of Seoul. What happens if you get seriously hurt in one of these street fights? An angry Sun Hu warned him he wouldn't repeat himself. If you cannot find me a worthy opponent, I will find one who can. In Sun Hu's status window, his stats indicated that he had the body of an adult male. His strength and intelligence were higher than most professional athletes, yet none of his stats were higher than F rank. Also, due to being awakened, his wounds healed much faster than normal people's. Sun Hu's physical characteristics were average, but now he'd grown to 180 centimeters. The improvements he made during his training affected the period he missed. His physical stats were incredible for a 14-year-old, but he still couldn't even pass the testing ground. Since there would be no more quests, he had to go to dungeons to level up. He had already thought of a place. On a small mountain in Hwasun City, Jeollanam-do Province, there was an F-rank dungeon. The young man had a lot of preparations to make. He had to buy the mountain, fence it off from outsiders, and prepare protective walls in case a monster escaped from the dungeon. Now a site like this would cost about $1.3 million. Including the security walls, he's going to need a lot of money. And that's not all. Dungeons are hidden all over the world. In order to take sole possession of all the dungeons, it will take an incredible amount of effort. Moreover, Sun Hu should be one step ahead. Since he knows the future, it won't be hard to make money. He can make a fortune in the blink of an eye. But don't get cocky because the kids are minors. He needs a trusted confidant. A young teacher interrupts his musings by putting her hand in front of the young man's face. The girl asks the young man to focus on his studies and asks him what he is thinking about. The young man apologizes to his teacher. He can't focus on his middle school classes right now. While in class, Sun Hu once again delves into his memories. He is sitting impaled by two spears. Two men from his squad impaled the guy with their spears. They asked the captain not to hold a grudge. After all, he would have done the same thing if he had been in their shoes, grasping the spears with his hands. Sun Hu smiled and agreed with them. He was sure the boys were just following their instincts. The traitors' faces immediately filled with horror. Before they could answer, the former captain, the two men were reduced to ashes. It turns out that by picking up the sticks, the guy activated a special skill with which he sizzled the enemies. They go crazy once they see the box, said Adun Sanka quietly. A voice came from the depths of the cave. Was that the mark of destruction? The long-haired man stepped closer to the young man, expressing his joy at not being within range of the skill. Realizing that Jonathan was in cahoots with the two, the guy asked the one if he was really with them. Relax, son, Jonathan said with a smirk, then activated his special skill and began treating Sun Hu. The long-haired man used the mark of cure on the young man, then announcing that it was time to pay his debts. He said that he had now repaid his debt from last time. With a sigh of relief, Sun Hu told Jonathan with surprise that he had not expected there was still room for compassion in this godless world. Coming back from the dungeon, the long-haired man tells the boy that he has heard that he also worked on Wall Street. He then asks the young man if he remembers the financial market of '97. Sun Hu explains to Jonathan that there was an Asian financial crisis in his country at the time. He was young, but he will never forget it. The forgetful partner only at this point remembered that the guy was from Korea. Jonathan was a trader who peaked his career in Hong Kong during the Asian financial crisis. Although it's hard to believe with his current state, at the time the man was even more ferocious. In some ways they called him the Wolf of Wall Street. Jonathan finds no point in being an awakened Oranga. He misses the days when money was everything. He was able to reach a ring to the envy of everyone, but he still looked like he was really longing for the old days. The man who can be a proxy is Jonathan. He is 25 now, so he must work on Wall Street. He often mentioned the Wall Street Wolf in his stories because the company he worked for had the word wolf in its name. That information should be enough to find him. Sun Hu started looking for Wall Street financial companies with the word wolf in their names. Soon the guy found what he was looking for. His face is unburdened by despair and suffering, but Sun Hu recognized him immediately in the information the young man found. In addition to a photograph, there was Jonathan's email. The guy wrote a message to the man that read, "Nice to meet you, Jonathan. I would like to hear your opinion on whether the Thai baht is overvalued." Sun Hu is confident that Jonathan will definitely respond. Jonathan believed that hedge funds, investment vehicles using large accounts with few owners to maximize returns, were planning to crash the Thai baht, but he wasn't entirely sure. If he started making ambitious investments based on the information that Sun Hu provided, the rumors of his success would grow into something much more. After a moment, Jonathan replied to the stranger, "The Thai baht is not overvalued. That's it. Don't pretend you know nothing." The young man murmured under his breath and began typing his response in an email. Sun Hu apologized for the misunderstanding, explaining that by reevaluating the baht, he meant someone could capitalize on it. That's when it all began. Jonathan replied as quickly as if he'd been waiting for the answer. In his email, he asked the stranger to reveal his identity and his employer. Sun Hu knew Jonathan would be intrigued. Then the young man began texting non-stop, trying even harder to grab Jonathan's attention. There are many reasons why the Thai baht can be used by utopians for their own benefit. Asia's foreign exchange reserves and a stable high dollar make the baht an easy target for hedge funds. I believe the Thai baht will collapse this month, but Thailand is not their ultimate target. Thailand is just the beginning. Jonathan couldn't believe his eyes. Thailand is just the beginning? Wall Street really is in chaos right now. Could that mean the stranger was part of this takeover? Jonathan wondered who he was, or rather, who they all were. "It could be a test. My office is open anytime. I'll be expecting you. If you are unable to come here, here is my contact information," the man wrote in the email. This was exactly the kind of response Sun Hu had expected from Jonathan. Jonathan wondered why the stranger acted as if he knew all the answers and was just waiting for him to understand. The man has excellent ideas, but he doesn't know where to go, Sun Hu thought. Jonathan couldn't get past this soon enough. Soon there will be a declaration of war on the financial market. April 1997. Hedge funds attack on the Thai baht begins. 1992. The pound sterling collapsed in 50 days. Because of these events, Wall Street predicts the Thai baht will fall within the next 50 days. However, contrary to all expectations, the Thai baht did not fall so easily. On the contrary, it has not relinquished its position and has even seriously shaken up hedge funds. It endured for about 3 months, and eventually Thailand succumbed on July 2nd after mounting the baht attack. Jonathan sent more than a dozen emails urging people to contact him, all of them detailing how he had been betting that the Thai baht would collapse in May, which, as he expected, never happened. After a long hiatus, Sun Hu replied to Jonathan with a new message, asking to be informed if Jonathan had received any investment income from a bet on the baht's growth. Jonathan would likely wonder what it all meant, but the answer came swiftly. Following Jonathan's reply, the stranger sent another message suggesting that Jonathan start his own brokerage firm and promising that Sun Hu himself would craft an investment plan for him. However, what followed was astonishing. The stranger demanded 51% of the firm's income as compensation. What the hell is going on here? This lunatic is betting on the Thai baht to rise. Yet he previously claimed it was destined to collapse. He never specified whether the hedge funds would prevail, but the attack is already underway, and Thailand seems powerless to counter it. Even the United Kingdom, with its robust 1992 economy, couldn't stop them. Betting on the baht's growth simply defies logic. The investments Jonathan funneled could only have come from VIPs, or even more influential backers. But now a stranger is demanding over half the profits for an investment plan? Exhaling deeply, Jonathan realized a bitter truth. He had been duped by a con man. Humbled and disillusioned, he resolved to abandon this stranger and seek other opportunities. However, curiosity got the better of Jonathan. He hung up the phone and decided to ask one last question. In his reply letter, he asked the stranger how he had come to the conclusion that hedge funds would lose. It was as if the person on the other side of the screen had been waiting for that question. At the exact same second, a reply came back. Jonathan seemed to have misunderstood something. After all, the stranger had never once said that the hedge funds would lose. One by one, messages began to arrive in Jonathan's email. The man stared at the monitor with bated breath. "Understand," Ty Banks wrote, "hedge funds have many ways to protect themselves, bilateral agreements, a dual-rate system, and so on. Thailand has a couple more trump cards up its sleeve. My point is that the Thai baht will only rise for a short period, not crash. Jonathan immediately realized all the possibilities this situation could present, accidentally spilling coffee on himself. All Wall Street is betting on right now, the next message read, is that the bot will fall. They're confident of this and are using it as an opportunity to get closer to VIPs. Is it possible that someone else knows about the bot's growth? No, even if they do, it won't matter. Jonathan decided to give it a try. When he told his boss, the man couldn't believe what he was hearing. He called Jonathan crazy and threw the report papers in his face. "These greedy hedge funds are doing everything to bring down the bot," he shouted. Suddenly, Jonathan thought, Thailand can protect itself. The fat man then offered Jonathan riches right then and there. If Jonathan was going to keep screwing around, he warned, there would soon be a rumor about an idiot working at their company. Annoyed, Jonathan realized this was exactly what he had feared. When he arrived at the office, he informed his colleague that there was no point in betting on the bot's growth. Unfortunately, our Wolf Corporation is not going to work with something like this. Sun Hu reminds the man that a little earlier he had offered Jonathan a job to work for him. Who does that bastard think he is offering him 51% of the profits? It's the same as letting him control his finances in the future. Who would agree to that kind of contract when Sun Hu advises the man to think hard before the end of May? Jonathan offers to meet and discuss it in person at his office. Then the guy stops responding to his messages again, which makes Jonathan very angry. All the co-workers mock Jonathan. He's the only one who didn't profit from the fall of the bots. People in the company look down on him. At the end of May, news channels and newspapers are bursting with morning headlines. The ASEAN Central Bank has signed a bilateral agreement. Thailand receives $12 billion in aid. It's a nightmare on Wall Street. The Thai bot is rising. Everyone's going crazy. They're going to lose at least $300 million. The only person who predicted the rise of the bot and lost nothing was Jonathan. Remembering all those correspondences, Jonathan realizes Sun Hu was right. He really was right. A colleague standing behind him informs him that he is being summoned by the boss of the company. After a while, the boss is already introducing Jonathan Hunter as the pride of Wolf Corporation. He will introduce a new prominent VIP worker, furious over the rise of the bot while remaining unaffected himself. But that's what he thinks and wants. Jonathan rips off his company name tag and places it on the table in front of the VIP, then announces that he is leaving Wolf Corporation as of today and starting his own brokerage company. When courting the VIP, he remarks that he is not going to change his number so they can contact him at any time. When the boss tries to contradict him, he interrupts him, reminding him of how the fat man recently told him to get out. Jonathan just does what the boss wants him to do. The fat man asks him if he has a sponsor. Jonathan replies that he will soon. The fact that he is the only one who has been able to avoid disaster is already known to all of Wall Street. When his former boss resorts to insults and tells him that he won't always be so lucky, Jonathan replies that no one knows what will happen next, and has Wall Street ever needed such a lucky man? Jonathan packs his bags with peace of mind and writes to Sun Hu about quitting his job. He accepts his crazy decision and clarifies where Sun Hu should meet him. Sun Hu, who was doing his usual strength exercises, hears the sound of a message being sent, jumps up abruptly and looks at the email after reading everything. Jonathan sent a message, "Got it, come to Seoul right now." Sun Hu didn't really miss those middle school days, though he was glad to see his friends again. However, now everyone thinks he's weird. He doesn't look like a middle school student, more like someone who's been suspended 5 times. Sun Hu was even relieved that no one was getting too close. The bell rang for class and all the students immediately scattered. The empty corridor brought back memories Sun Hu had assiduously tried to erase. That horrible scene where no one survived. Standing alone, he was noticed by the teacher, a girl who didn't see the tears welling up in his eyes. At Seoul International Airport, the man approached Sun Hu, introduced himself and said, "Hello." Sun Hu greeted his guest in return and suggested they go somewhere else. As they walked, each was lost in thought. Sun Hu still wasn't used to seeing Jonathan so neatly dressed, despite trying to adjust to his partner's new appearance from photographs. Jonathan, meanwhile, was surprised at how well Sun Hu spoke English. Taking a seat at a nearby table and looking around with a smile, Jonathan asked, "When is that mysterious stranger coming?" He told Sunhu the stranger had a very unusual way of communicating, only through letters. What Jonathan heard next shocked him. "I've been sending those messages, Jonathan," Sunhu said. He thanked Jonathan for coming and then waited for a response. Such a confession made Jonathan very angry. How old is this guy? 19, 20. He dropped everything and came here for this. With a finger in Sunhu's face, Jonathan demanded, "Do you realize what you've done?" Looking at the angry expression on his former partner's face, Sunhu felt he was facing the true Jonathan for the first time. Jonathan wondered aloud if Wall Street judged by age, and then, offering an alternative, suggested Sunhu could fly back if he wasn't satisfied. Before leaving, Sunhu handed something to his guest. Suddenly standing, Jonathan furiously grabbed the papers from Sunhu's hands. "What the hell is this?" he exclaimed. When Jonathan read what was written on the pages, he was stunned. Sunhu asked the man to sit down and listen to what he was about to tell him. Didn't the Asian financial crisis predict the moment when the US government would provide them with unlimited dollars? This means that the 21st century will be a golden milestone in Asia's history. All the hedge funds had done was to put in a spoonful of money. Sunhu finished his monologue and asked Jonathan what he thought of his report. After summarizing everything he had read, Jonathan realized that the guy thought that, as it were, Thailand would fall. In response, the young man asked a perfectly reasonable question about what Jonathan had been thinking before he read the report. He wouldn't be able to answer that easily. That's the situation on Wall Street in 1992. It all started after hedge funds got a bang from the Thai government. No one could have predicted this outcome of a battle in a war that was thought to be already won. However, contrary to all expectations, on July 2nd, the Thai government declared surrender. That's how they prevailed in the end. But this report left out an important detail. After explaining all this, Jonathan waited for the young man's answer. "It's not for me to answer that, Jonathan," Sunhu explained, and looking into the man's eyes added, "You have to answer me yourself whether you have the right to work with me or not." When Jonathan heard this, he realized that the boya would not tell him anything until he had signed the contract. He would make it worse for himself if he underestimated the young man because of his age. After sitting down and calming himself, the man explained to Sunhu that, having everything with him, money and documents, he would definitely not be without a job. Then with a smirk, he asked what he had. Convincing his interlocutor, the young man said the opportunity was worth it, and, even more so, what would have happened to Jonathan if Sunhu had picked someone else in March. He would have lost all his savings betting on the fall of the Thai baht. Even now, talking to the man, Sunhu was losing money he could have made. Puzzled, Jonathan asked the young man for time to think. He didn't trust the boy completely. After all, he was too unpredictable. Unsatisfied with this answer, Sunhu got up from the table and agreed to wait. But only until the 3rd of June. The American guest sincerely did not understand why there was such a hurry after all. The 3rd of June was just around the corner. However, looking at the graph and the report the guy gave him, the man noticed something. Last time in 1992, the right period on the chart was at the July 2nd mark. Sunhu explained to his uncomprehending colleague that now all that remains is to calculate how much they will lose in the remaining few days. Just because you can predict a trend doesn't mean you can predict a date unless you're a god, Jonathan shouted. After him, "Well, please, love and pity God," the guy replied and headed for the exit. The man was amazed that this kid knew not only the approximate time, but also the exact date. That's impossible. As he left, Sunhu reminded Jonathan that he had until June 3rd. But if he failed to make up his mind by then, it was over between them. If this is the Jonathan the guy knows, Sunhu thought, he'll make the right choice. The next day, Sunhu received a new email in which Jonathan asked for advice on what he should name his company. Sunhu asked his partner if he regretted his choice. Jonathan's expression said everything, but it was too late to question how true and valuable that report had been. The man could understand how Sunhu had predetermined the fall, but how did he know the exact date? Not wanting to give away his secret, Sunhu replied that it was all thanks to his calculations. Unsatisfied, Jonathan told him to forget about it and insisted he had no more doubts. Then the man asked if Sun Hu would continue to fill him in on his plans. The boy promised to share some tricks, and from that moment on, Jonathan trusted everything Sun Hu did. He asked for his partner's name so he'd know the name of his business partner. The boy introduced himself as Sun Hu, which Jonathan didn't fully catch but liked. In that case, Hirosh suggested, let's name our company Jonathan and Sun Hu Investment. The man didn't like that. He didn't want his name in the title. So perplexed, Jonathan agreed, then told Sun Hu he had $400,000 to get them started, his entire capital, and he would give Sun Hu 51% of it. This man is definitely out of his mind, Sun Hu thought. After a pause, Jonathan asked if Sun Hu had any money to add. The young man replied that if he'd had money, he wouldn't have called his partner to Korea. Jonathan then asked why Sun Hu chose him and how he knew about him. Sun Hu said he found him on the Wolf Corporation website. His identity wasn't that important. Hearing this, Jonathan breathed a sigh of relief and then uttered a phrase Sun Hu had heard before. The paths are inexplicable. Luck will never catch up with you if you count on it alone. If she's the only one you're counting on, Sun Hu replied. He remembered saying that before when he'd planned to save up his points to open the Challenger box. But at the last moment, he'd spent all of them to open the Master box, intending to sell its items, indulge in carnal pleasures, and end his life. Instead, he obtained a powerful skill that could only be found in the Challenger box. Getting a highly ranked item, there was a true miracle. However, it was a miracle. Still, it was in the hands of someone who had already given up. Despite Sun Hu's best efforts to dissuade him, Jonathan decided to seek revenge. This was his last memory of Jonathan. A while later, the boy learned of his death. Why are you looking at me like that? With those words, Jonathan interrupted the boy's musings. Was he really so moved that the man called him an opportunity? The young man is actually my opportunity, and that will be enough, Sun Hu, the man added, taking the papers out of the briefcase. He asked the lad to give him his divine calculations. Then Sun Hu asked the final question. Will Jonathan follow me without further question, even if I ask him to bet everything on the line? The man said yes without a second thought. He had already bet everything on this young man. Now sign these papers. The man held out the contract to Jonathan. Taking the papers in his hands and reading them carefully, the man noticed the first 6 digits in the Korean equivalent of a 10, which must mean Sun Hu's date of birth, 12 years old. Jonathan shrieked in surprise, looking at the boy sitting across from him. With a smirk, Sun Hu asked his partner to stop surprising him, suggesting they think about their business. The second week of June, the 9th through the 13th. Sun Hu was confident that the market would drop 10% during this period. Does that mean Thailand will raise the white flag this week? No, they would surrender a little later. Jonathan asked his partner why he was targeting the second week of June. Do you remember what I said earlier? Thailand is just the beginning. When the Thai market falls 10%, chaos will reign throughout Asia. Many will support the hedge fund's attack on the BOT, and their ultimate goal will be you, he said. With passion in his eyes, Jonathan decided to assume Hong Kong was next. But he was wrong. Korea was next. What are you talking about, Sun Hu? Foreign funds can't enter Korea without permission, Jonathan explained in surprise. That's right. They can't shake Korea in the foreign exchange market. The culprit is not hedge fund money. The fear that will spread through East Asia is the real culprit. Foreign funds will leave Korea. There's a real wave coming. Will Sun Hu try to stop it? Is it because of his patriotism? Jonathan explains to the young man that, no matter how brilliant he is, this wave is beyond anyone's control. But the boy has known this for a long time. He explains that money is his only goal. The economic war will be fought by an alliance of hedge funds, but when it's over, they will realize who really benefited from it. Jonathan, we'll make a bet with 50 times leverage, Sun Hu informs his partner with confidence. This statement shocks Jonathan. It means the risk of losing everything is 50 times greater. Even if the market downgrade is 10%, the chart will not fall straight to -10. It will rise 2%, fall 3%, and so on, oscillating up and down until a certain dissonance triggers a prompt collapse. Therefore, the greater the leverage, the more crucial trading skills become. With 50 times leverage, a 1% drop becomes 50 points, and a 2% drop turns into a 100% loss. In other words, since they are betting on the Thai baht falling, it will yield a profit of $400,000. That's right. Sun Hu is going to pour his entire fortune into it, all $400,000, with 50 times leverage. Every fluctuation will be multiplied by 50. It's a huge risk, like trading $20 million instead of $400,000. However, the Jonathan reached his prime thanks to his trading skills, sometime in October when the hedge fund alliance got a serious bang for its buck in Hong Kong. As long as a man trusts him, the results are unimaginable. The boy writes Jonathan a letter asking him not to doubt him. The young man expects good news from his partner. They must do this to prepare for the next war. There is only 1 week left, from the 9th to the 13th. If the baht drops 10%, they'll net $2 million. It's in your hands, Jonathan. In hysterics and alone, Jonathan screams, "All right, you crazy boy. I'll show you what the great Jonathan can do." Seoul International Airport, a passenger airplane arrives on the runway. The scene of Jonathan and Sun Hu's first meeting unfolds before us once more. A long-haired man clad in leather armor, mace in hand, drags a massive dead monster by the scruff of its neck. Of course, appearances deceive. The kid's eyes gleam with excitement. This time, however, Jonathan has brought back something far more valuable than monocrystals. 700, the man mutters as he approaches the youth. Jonathan can't meet his partner's gaze for long, but when the man finally looks at Sun Hu's face, tears well up in his eyes. Drawing in a shaky breath, he cries out, "700 times the result." Sun Hu, 700 times, 400,000. We've raised $280 million in the last week. We're geniuses. Sun Hu calls his mother next, warning her he'll be spending the night at his non-existent friend's house. When he hangs up, he exhales in relief. Meanwhile, Jonathan pores over the report Sun Hu sent him, 70,000% net profit. He did even better than expected. Still, such risky trading was worth every sleepless night. As Sun Hu reviews the papers, Jonathan paces behind him, barely containing his disbelief. From rags to riches, they'd become a leading hedge fund with just 2 people. Seeing Jonathan too wired to rest, Sun Hu suggests they plan their next move. With keen interest, Jonathan asks what unimaginable insights Sun Hu will share this time. Imagine Thailand implements a floating exchange rate system. Sun Hu begins. If we treat that day as the attack signal and put all our savings on maximum leverage, no rebounds will follow the currency collapse. It'll be a one-way drop. No one will step in until it bottoms out. But Thailand's sudden shift will instantly crash the market rate. Of course, adopting a floating rate could also read as a nation's declaration of surrender, a voluntary defeat in this war. Sun Hu turns to his partner. How much do you think we can make starting from $200 million? Jonathan is literally stunned by the question. Bet the whole $200 million. Does this guy really think the hedge fund alliance will just sit back if they place $200 million on a bot drop with maximum leverage? Turning around, Sun Hu reminded him that the hedge funds would be the ones to wage war if the young man got the day of the attack wrong. They would lose everything. Jonathan cried out that such a large bet without a risk control strategy was insane. He accused the guy of not being able to pull something like that off unless he was a god. Glancing at his partner, putting his hand on Jonathan's shoulder, the man asked, "What data do we start collecting? Tomorrow we need to check what percentage of Thailand's foreign exchange reserves they offloaded to make $280 million. He explained that this data was not easy to obtain and that making any reliable calculations would be even harder. Turning back to his partner, Sun Hu asked why he called it a bet at $200 million rather than the $280 million they hoped to earn. The remaining $80 million, he explained, would be enough to sign a contract with the head of the Bank of Thailand. That's why I'm instructing you, Jonathan, to go to Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. The man looked at the boy with horror. Is he really 12 years old? He murmured, displeased. Just one mistake, and he's a dead man. Sun Hu calmly replied that Thailand knew defeat was inevitable. They would use that inevitability to calculate the consequences. 1997 will be their starting point. Leaning against the wall, the man pronounced, Jonathan, let's put everything on the line. The next day, Jonathan seemed very anxious. His gaze was like a man treading a dungeon. While Jonathan was mining for information in the heart of enemy territory, Sun Hu decided to get down to business as well. A sudden impact broke his attacker's arm at the wrist. The knife flew out and clattered to the ground, and the man on the floor squirmed in pain. Someone tried to restrain Sun Hu, but the boy lectured his opponent. "You shouldn't have pulled that knife if you weren't prepared for the consequences." Behind him, another man tried to intervene. "This guy's worse than a stubborn bull. Rumor even says he's tied to some gang." That's it for today. If you want a continuation and enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and share so I can bring you more of this content. I hope to see you in the next video. See ya.